Leslie Marshall. Welcome back. Only true democracy and talk radio of, for, and by you, the people. Live on the radio nationwide, streaming live throughout the world on the World Wide Web when we broadcast live Monday through Friday, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. That is on our website, lesliemarshallshow.com. Our guest in this hour is William Panzarella. He is author of the new book, American Horse. It tells the story of the greatest generation and the struggles of a World War II veteran to grapple with confliction, grief, and regret. William, thank you for joining us. Welcome. Good evening. How are you?
Thank you very much. Good evening.
There is a new poll out that shows support for the war in Afghanistan. Some people would say it's crashed, it's definitely fallen off a cliff, taken a nosedive, come to a halt. And that's according to a new New York Times CBS News poll that support for the war in Afghanistan has dropped sharply among both Republicans and Democrats because there are increasing numbers of Americans saying that the U.S. should not be involved. William, as a veteran, and William, someone who has written this book, as author of this book, and writing about these types of issues, why do you think that is? Why such a turnaround from so many Americans, regardless of the political ideology?
Well, I think we have to remember that we've been in this Afghanistan for 10 years. I know that's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that September 11th was 10 years ago, but it actually was. I mean, we've been there longer than Vietnam, certainly longer than World War II and Korea.
So you think it's time, or, I mean, all of a sudden it's time? Because, just, William, weeks, definitely months ago, the Americans were divided and somewhat along, political lines, like those on the left, more of the, liberal Democrat pacifist types like me, were saying, get out, get out. We've been saying get out for years. So some on the right, are saying stay the course. We've got to complete the mission. Do you think it's also, some of the instances that we've, seen taking place there and the stories that many hear of post-traumatic stress syndrome, et cetera, upon the troops' arrival back home?
Oh, definitely. The whole Sergeant Bales incident. And but I also believe that, I understand why we first went in there, and I supported why we first went in there. But I don't remember nation building being one of those reasons. And it's a noble cause to help nations, but not at the cost of American lives. And we've scattered the Taliban. They'll probably return, and we've killed bin Laden. So now why are we there for?
Well, that's a good question. We'll continue talking with you. Our guest, 69% of Americans don't think the U.S. should be at war with Afghanistan. That's up from 53% 4 months ago. And 68% think the fighting is going badly, up 42% from just a month ago. William Panzarella, author of the new book, American Horse, is our guest. Quick break. Back to you right after this. I'm Leslie Marshall.
Want to hear your conversation with Leslie after the show? Go to lesliemarshallshow.com/members.
About buying gold and you say, hey, I've heard you mention it, Leslie, I'd like to try it out. How do you get started? Well, all you have to do is call Goldline. That's what I did. They have account executives standing by right now, as a matter of fact, who can show you how easy it is. Ask them how you can qualify for their price guarantee program. This is the deal with Goldline. The price guarantee program means that if the price of your gold drops within 7 days of your purchase, they will add additional coins to make up that difference. Many of their popular products qualify. The fractional American Eagle, Maple Leaf Gold coins are just two examples. Just give Goldline a call. They'll give you all the details. And you know what? They have been in business for more than 50 years just doing precious metals. Excellent customer service. They're a company that I am a customer of. I trust. I recommend to you. Call Goldline today, 1-800-275-COIN. Ask them about the different payment options. Read their important risk information. See if buying gold or silver is right for you. But don't wait. Get the information now. 1-800-275-COIN. Be sure to tell them that I, Leslie Marshall, sent you. You'll receive the latest issue of the American Advisor newsletter and the free Goldline Investor Kit. That's normally a $25 value or more. Call them today. That's Goldline, 1-800-275-2646, 1-800-275-COIN. Talking with our guest in this hour, and we certainly hope you'll join us. Keep in mind, when we have a guest, it is your program of For and By You, the People. And even though I'm asking questions, we welcome your opinions, questions, comments, and concerns. So joining us in this hour, if you want to get on board before Talk Radio News Service comes in the last few minutes of this hour, pick up the phone at 888-6-LESLIE, 888-653-7543. Author of the new book, American Horse, William Panzarella is our guest. The book tells the story of the greatest generation and the struggles of a World War II veteran to grapple with confliction, grief, and regret. William, thank you for holding. Welcome back. We were talking about a new poll in Afghanistan. You know, how do you think, William, with your experience as an author, a vet, et cetera, how will the approval of the American people plummeting of this war impact our troops abroad in Afghanistan? How do you think it will impact them?
Well, I think most troops over there have done 4, 5, some even 6 tours, and they've been back home. And I think that they understand, thank God, unlike Vietnam, that people are able to differentiate their opinions of the war from the people that fight them. And though I think the approval rating for us being in Afghanistan has plummeted, the approval rating of support of our troops is as high as ever.
So they're not going to look at it as, the people throwing them into the bus, Americans not supporting the troops. They're going to look at it as it's time, America supports us. And like you said, when the mission changes greatly, because we're not supposed to be nation builders, right?
Correct.
It's time to change course when we're no longer staying the course because it's changed.
Exactly. And, we talk about the plan is to get out within the next year. I say get out within the next month. To me, if we get out within the next month or the next year, I think the only thing that's going to change is the loss of more American lives. I think if we stay there another 5 years, not much is going to change.
William, is that something that you have felt all along, most recently within the past year? What you just said?
For the last several years. Like I said, I completely, unlike Iraq, I completely understood why we went into Afghanistan. I think we had to. But though we've scattered the Taliban, we've got bin Laden, who, incidentally, as we all know, wasn't even in Afghanistan, was in Pakistan. I think even if we leave Afghanistan and Afghanistan crumbles, I mean, we would have to go into Pakistan. We would have to go into Syria. There's so many other nations. It'd be great if we could do that, but we just can't.
You said, quote, fortunately, unlike during the Vietnam War, regardless of whether or not Americans support the war effort, the vast majority support our troops. And that's, one thing you said. You definitely looked at as a veterans advocate, and that's extremely admirable, William. And, in a sense, different than Vietnam and even other wars historically, we blame the war, not the warrior. And does that mean America's learned from our mistakes historically, if nothing else from Vietnam, where we blamed the warriors rather than the war they were sent to fight?
I think we have, thank God. And I talk a lot about this in American Horse. That in Vietnam, and really to understand Vietnam, you have to understand Korea, which was our first proxy war. And it wasn't a very popular war. But although it was kind of like today, although a lot of people didn't agree with going into Korea, people still supported the troops. But I think what you had in Vietnam, it was just a different generation. And you had a exploding volcano. You had the civil rights movement. You had riots. You had the assassinations of JFK, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy. And you had this overwhelming mistrust of the government and almost a mob mentality where people lumped the soldiers of the government as the government.
When we look at Vietnam, and that's before my time, I must admit, William. What can Americans, and I'm a history buff, so I certainly feel like it was not. But what do you think Americans have learned, and what can we learn? Because, I mean, especially from troop treatment at home and how it impacts the vets. Right now, the numbers that I see, that we know of, that are reported, approximately at least 30% or more vets who come home from Iraq and Afghanistan suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. Although there are great programs and support, a lot of them don't want to admit it. They perceive it as weakness or fear it'll affect their options for employment, etc. So what can we as a nation do to support our troops, not just with PTSD, but especially learning from Vietnam the entirely, wrong way to do something, which is to spit in the face of people who've just fighted and defended your freedom and your safety.
Exactly. And first of all, like I said, thank God it's not like that, there's spitting in the face and baby killers and all that. And as you pointed out, there are great programs. You can go to the Department of Veteran Affairs website or the Department of Labor website. But such high unemployment rate amongst especially young veterans. And I think in part that is just because there is a lot of unemployment in the country. And, for instance, if a bank is looking for a bank teller, they want a specific skill set. If you don't have experience as a bank teller, they don't want you. I think employers have to look more at the big picture of what a veteran and somebody in the military has to offer as far as their character, their integrity, and what they could offer 5-10 years down the road to the company.
When, I've been listening to different interviews of different people and, coming home and some specials. And, in October, thousands are going to be returning, right? According to Reuters, 33,000 U.S. troops are due to depart Afghanistan, head back home to the United States by October. Now, you had said, quote, unfortunately, once they return home, many veterans are faced with difficulties, and even those trying to take advantage of them. Now, you just talked about employment. We talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. But one of the things we don't talk about is just the huge difference in their day-to-day life when they are overseas in a place like Afghanistan. Different country, different culture, how things are from them from when they wake up, putting their clothes on, who they're with and going to sleep. And then when they come home, it is such a huge adjustment. And there's really no transition. That's one thing I do feel the military should provide and could do better, is some kind of a transitional program. You know what I mean? Because there was a guy I was listening to that said, overseas, and he goes, I'm saluted, I'm respected, and he said, and then I come home, and he goes, and I'm sitting on the couch, and everybody in my family has their life going on, and I'm trying to figure out where I fit into all of this. Then there was another guy that said, and this really shocked me, and I didn't know this, and you probably know this much better than I, William, that the 4th of July is the worst holiday for most vets because of the noise. Because of the noise, and I never thought of that. The fireworks, the M80s and things like that. And how many of us don't realize how different it is to getting up and to hearing shooting and bombs and being in a uniform and in a completely regimented schedule, and all of a sudden you have no schedule, and you're frightened by different things, like if somebody comes up behind you, etc. You know what I mean? It's such a different world. Do you think we could do better, and there should be more programs for this transition for our vets?
Yes, well several things. Number one, you talked about the withdrawal, and that's, like I said, that is the plan. But what most Americans don't understand is that we're still sending people over there. For instance, my nephew is going to his first deployment to Afghanistan in May. So even though, we always hear about we're bringing all the troops home, other troops are still going over there. And you brought up an interesting point about respect. And even though it's symbolic, here in New York, I'm almost appalled that Mayor Michael Bloomberg hasn't had yet in the Canyon of Heroes a parade for those that have returned from Iraq. Vietnam veterans had to wait 10 years for a parade in New York, and hopefully that won't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to, we need to show them that we deserve them and recognize them, so that we don't have that gap. So that they,
exactly.
And that's one thing that can be done differently. There's a lot of fraud out there. We hear commercials about it. Hey, I got an email. This is kind of funny, very true. A friend of mine called me and asked me actually if I could MC a charity event they're having. Bad thing about some of my friends when they know what I do for a living, right? Of course, it's charity event, you're not getting paid anyway, right? But it's like, oh, great, another Saturday gone, right? And I'm like, sure. I hung up the phone. I did a couple of things, made dinner, whatever, and I'm checking my email. And I got an email from him. He said he was in Spain and he was in prison, etc. And I had to laugh because I just got off the phone with him. So I called him up, and it's obvious that somebody hacked into his computer. Now, this was just an email, and I was bright enough not to wire for $5,000 or whatever. But not saying soldiers wouldn't be, but I think soldiers are very big targets for fraud financially. Is that correct?
Definitely. And as far as individual con artists, unfortunately, you're never going to stop that. But you look at companies, for instance, in 2011, most of us will remember J.P. Morgan, Chase, and others were fined. In my opinion, some people should have went to prison, but they were fined for defrauding veterans and their families by substantially overcharging them mortgage fees that were not allowable under the interest rate reduction refinancing loans program. And I think that's just appalling because, as I said, there's a difference between somebody just sending you an email. That's wrong. I mean, you know what I mean? That's a con artist. But these are Fortune 500 companies that are responsible for this.
Let's take some calls. And this caller's Daily Dave. He's joining us from Hawaii, and he happens to be a veteran. I know that because he's called the program before. Dave, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Question or comment for our guest?
Aloha, Leslie. Thank you. Sir, it's nice to talk to you. One of the things, I mean, in the past, there's been necessary wars, and in the future, there will be necessary wars again. You know, I wish there weren't. And the military is a necessary evil. But it seems to me like if you're talking about, you know, the sinking of the Maine or the Gulf of Tonkin incident, some people speculate the events of 9/11, over and over and over again, it seems like each generation, the government steps up and tells us that we're under threat by, you know, evil foreigners, and the media steps in line, the newspapers and the television, you know, trumpets, this necessary action, and again, we send our kids off to die and spend, you know, our treasure. And it just seems like we're never going to learn that it's the same story over and over and over.
William?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. And second of all, I agree. And I don't agree with many things that Dr. Ron Paul says, but I do believe that unless we're under imminent threat or there's, you know, a rescue mission or a specific tactical, you know, take out a terrorist base, that we should go to Congress and declare war. And I understand the flip side of that is it's Congress, it's not the American people, and not many people have trust in Congress, but at least it is something.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've read about, I'm sure, the Gulf of Tonkin and how,
yes,
you know, a minor incident was blown up, and it's so, they're blown out of proportion, let me say that.
Yeah.
And it seems like the newspapers, the reporters stop reporting. All of a sudden they become just another wing of the Pentagon.
Yes, I mean, there's definitely a culture of fear, you know, and some of it is real, but a lot of it is people, like you just pointed out, if we don't do this, this is going to happen, almost like extortion. And I think the military should be used as a last resort, because I think when it is used, it should be all in. Either a war is worth fighting or it's not. You know, if it's worth young American men and women dying for, then it's worth going all the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
We appreciate that and appreciate your service, as you had said, William. Absolutely. Why do you think the unemployment rate is not only so high among vets, but, you know, those younger vets, you know, some kids that have come, you know, home after, you know, 1 year and they get out, or, you know, have done their 4 years, age 18 to 24, unemployment rate's very high among veterans. Why do you think so, William?
It's staggering. Like I said before, I think part of the reason, and it may not even be purposeful, but employers look for specific skill sets. So if somebody last 7 years has been doing tours in Afghanistan or in Iraq, and they're a heavy machine gunner, they come into an employer. The employer says, "Well, we don't need a machine gunner," you know. But again, I think employers need to look more at the bigger picture, what they have to offer that company, not just instantly, even if they need a little bit of training, what they have to offer that company in the big picture.
All right. I appreciate you being with us, William. We'd love to talk to you again, you know, if not before, then maybe certainly in October as some of those troops come home. William Panzarella's book is called American Horse. It's been a pleasure having him on the Leslie Marshall Show. Check out his website. It's williampanzarella.com. capital WILLIAM, capital P as in Paul, ANZARELLA, WilliamPanzarella.com. Do check it out. He's author of the new book, American Horse. And he is a veterans advocate, and that is admirable. I'm Leslie Marshall. Quick break, and coming up, Talk Radio News Service. Don't go away.
Leslie Marshall. Real people, real life, real talk. Give her a call now at 888-6-LESLIE.